Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this PhD support group meeting. This is the Tuesday session of the weekly UKZN Doctoral Academy program. I'm Leni Liebenberg. Thank you so much for joining us today. I do believe this would be the second last session of the PhD support group meeting for 2022. It's been quite a year. We've had so many inspirational talks, and this one in particular is going to be a goodie. So to any new participants today, just a reminder, this is a very, very casual and supportive space, and we really do encourage interaction amongst each other and with the speakers. So please do feel free and very comfortable enough to pop any questions in the chat box, raise your hands if you'd like to say something, use your reaction icons, just, interact within this safe space that we've provided in order for you to do so. If you do feel you'd rather voice an opinion anonymously, that is fine. Please do send me a private message and I'll gladly ask your question or raise your comment anonymously for you. Right, I guess that's the housekeeping out of the way. In today's session, we have a very special guest, Dr. Brenda from UKZN, who will be speaking to us about resilience. And well, Dr. Brenda has actually literally written the book on resilience during her PhD while investigating challenges associated with reintegration of medical students returning from Cuba. So we look forward to having her here today to discuss this concept of resilience. Why is it? Why is it important? Why do we need it? Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Brenda. We look forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Lynn. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be given a chance to actually have this chat, because I'd like to believe that this is a safe space and more like we have conversations than we have a fully fledged lecture. So I will just start by introducing myself. I am Buhle Mod Donda. I am an educationist with an interest in medical education, and particularly an interest in students with challenges. So my interest is in student support, and obviously that is why I ended up taking interest in the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro Medical Collaboration students. Having said that, I would like to start by posing two questions. What is resilience, and why does it matter? So my talk will be around what is resilience, why does it matter, is it a disposition, is it a socialized disposition, or is it a process or an outcome? Can it be taught, can it be learned? Now, defining resilience is the most easiest thing ever to do. And we have an avalanche of short and precise definitions, but sadly, there is no consensus around what constitutes resilience. Now, for us as academics, there is a good and a bad situation. The goodness about it is that it means that so many people have taken interest in understanding resilience, and therefore they've looked at it from different perspectives, using different methodologies, using different schools of thought. So therefore, it means that there is something that is attracting people towards resilience. The sad side about it is we need constructive validity. When we are talking about something, for us to be able to understand each other, we first have to establish if we are talking about the same thing, or are we talking about different things, maybe calling them with the same name. Other than that, we all agree, there is consensus on one thing, that for resilience to be shown, there needs to be difficulties or adversities. Therefore, any definition that relates to resilience will touch on either difficulties, challenges, or adversities. So one of the definitions is that resilience is an ability to deal with difficulties and adversities. It is the capacity to rebound from adversity, strengthened and more resourceful. So the focus here is that the rebound, after the rebound, you come out more stronger and more resourceful, because you have to try by all means to make sure that you deal with your adversities and your challenges in such a way that you really overcome them. If not, live with them, internalize the best ways of dealing with your problems. Then why does it matter if it is so much of a cliche? It's a fad. Someone decided to call it a bandwagon where everyone wants to ride. You know, within minutes when we're trying to understand a phenomenon, people will easily say, oh no, that one is resilient. So we've spoken, we've thrown the word around to such an extent that some feel that it's more of a fad than anything else. If someone does something, then people will just say the person is resilient. So what does it mean? So the first instance is a discussion on why does resilience matter? Now, to this group, that's why I have the first 2 points bigger than the last 2 points. To this group, I felt that the most important are the 2 points. That point number 1, that elaborates that resilience is a driver of self-directed learning. And when you are doing your PhD, it is assumed that you are a self-directed learner, because there is so much that has to do with you leading the way, of course, with the help of your supervisor. But you are the one person who actually has to decide as to what you do, when you do it, how you do it. And the supervisor is meant just to guide you through the journey, based on the fact that the supervisor has actually has an experience of having he himself or herself traveled through the same journey. And then resilience is a driver for healthy well-being. The most prominent outcome when people are facing adversities is mental health issues. Therefore, if you are resilient, it's when you are able to come out of adversities, showing that your health, your mental health is still intact. Now, we have other ways wherein resilience has been shown to matter. Now, within affinity groups, resilience does matter, because those take a social justice discourse, that one of resistance, that one of overcoming adversities, where you find a feminist group that will be fighting maybe against unequal payments at workplaces, things like shorter, unrealistic maternity leaves at work. So those are affinity groups, and they show some kind of resilience from a perspective of social justice. And we have what Anga called hidden resilience. And this one is not, it's rather notorious than famous, based on the fact that we wouldn't want to acknowledge the antisocial behavior that some people adopt to cap adversities as resilience. But it is resilience, because if I believe that I am poor and I don't have money for food, then I go and steal, then that is a form of resilience in my terms, that I have tried to do something about it and I have food in front of my table. And unfortunately, this can never be condoned, because it is antisocial and unacceptable. Then conceptualization of resilience as a disposition. Now, some people would like to understand that you are born resilient, and therefore it is an intrinsic trait that one can possess. However, we have to take note of the fact that as individuals, we are socialized human beings. So it's either you take it from your nuclear family, you take it from your community, you take it from even the very fact that you are South African, you know, as citizens of this country. We have so many socialized dispositions that we have that may differ from someone who's coming from another country. Therefore, socialized dispositions may be seen not only as representing a frame of mind, but also the beliefs that actually shape your cognitive and non-cognitive habits. And at the center of this is the phenomenon of internalization, because once you've been socialized into a particular disposition, once you've internalized it, you don't have to stop and hang on for 1 minute. I'm thinking about some disposition that I have learned. You always react to situations the way you have been socialized. So unless if you conscientiously decide that I am not going to behave like that. Right, resilience as a process and an outcome. Brenda explains this nicely. She argues that for any person to be recognized as resilient, there needs to be some kind of challenge, adversity, or difficulty. And that the person will actually have these mediating processes that will engage with in order to be able to come with a better than expected outcome. And I like the fact that she says better than expected outcome, because sometimes people will not recognize resilience because they would want a person to come 100% unharmed. That is in most instances not possible. However, the admiration rests on the fact that irrespective of the impact of whatever challenges that the person has been facing, the person comes with a better than expected outcome. You are a single mom, you lose your job, you're still doing your PhD, and you find that instead of doing it over the 4 years, you do it over 5 years or 6 years. But the fact of the matter is you're resilient enough to have pulled through and finished your PhD, even though as academics, we wouldn't encourage people taking longer doing their PhDs, but it is the fact of the matter for a particular person facing an intense form of adversity. Therefore, when we are talking about resilience, Brenda emphasizes the fact that we are actually looking at resilience as a process, and therefore we talk of resilience. And then when we talk of resilience as an outcome, we refer to a person as being resilient. Now, resilience can be both a process and an outcome. And she introduces hardiness, which is resilience as a process or a protective mechanism, which involves commitment and a sense of control over one's circumstances, which can be achieved when one acquires the belief that life will always come with surprises, challenges, and changes rather than stability, which is, in a nutshell, we always refer to this to being realistic. We're always realistic about life. I want to do my PhD, so it's not a bed of roses. I'm not going to walk in there, do my protocol in 6 months, submit my protocol, get my ethical clearance, collect my data, analyze my data, publish, and. So you have to be realistic, put it in your mind that should I encounter challenges, how then will I be able to deal with those challenges? Martin and Marsh came up with the resilience theory. And this one is particularly, it particularly talks to self-directed learning. And he came up with the 5 C's. And the 5 C's refer to confidence, capacity to plan, control of the learning environment, composure, and commitment as the 5 ways or mediating processes of resilience. So when you talk of confidence, we always associate confidence with self-efficacy, and in extension with self-esteem. Now, when you when you're talking about self-efficacy, this is a term that was captured by Bandura, and it simply means I can and I will. Whether you are facing whatever adversity that you are facing, it is a belief that it is doable and I will finish the race. And then self-esteem, together with confidence, with self-efficacy, they contribute to the successful functioning of the individual in their social context. Because whenever we are talking about an individual, we shouldn't forget the social context. If you are a PhD student, it means you exist within the community of researchers, within the community of the university as a whole, and which does not take you away from your social context in terms of your family, your friend, your community. And the capacity to plan. The capacity to plan is very important, because if you have a challenge, sometimes the plan itself determines whether you are going to succeed or not. And as PhD students, the one important thing is time management, setting timelines, putting those Gantt charts so as to know when do you want to do this, setting your goals and implementing your goals. And it is very important to know that once the goal has been set, there needs to be a plan around implementing your goal. And for not forgetting the fact that the very fact that you have planned your goal, set your goals, plan them, doesn't necessarily mean that when you implement them from the very beginning, they are going to come right. And then control of the learning environment. You have self-regulation, regulating strategies that you can use to actually, this comes naturally, because most of us, you find that someone says, you know, I do a lot if I wake up midnight and do my work. And someone would say, I do better if I wake up very early in the morning. And someone says, I work better if I work longer hours. I just wake up on a Saturday morning and the whole day I dedicate myself to my work. So those are self-regulation strategies that you know. And some of them need you to be tactful depending on your situation. If you are a mother, then you know, obviously, I can't be doing much, you know, when my kids are still awake. Then what you do is you wake up midnight, you wake up very early in the morning. So it depends how you control your learning environment. And then composure and low levels of anxiety. This one is very important, because when you have difficulties, the first thing that comes is anxiety. The first thing, if you find so many obstacles, you are not able to source funds to fund your research initiative, then the first thing that comes to your mind, will I finish my PhD? How long will I take to finish my PhD? And remember, the university funds most of the research initiatives. So the other anxiety may come from, will my sponsor not withdraw that I'm taking longer than I'm expected to? So there are many ways of making sure that you stay composed. Meditation is one of them. Give yourself time to reflect. And sometimes group reflection is much better than individual reflection, because when you reflect as an individual, you tend to think that you are the only one facing the problem. Whereas when you have a group of people, you have a critical friend, it can be even one person, but that person, if that person is a critical friend, then you always know that when you need to reflect, then you can always bounce your ideas on that particular person. And spirituality in whatever form. And spirituality is very broad, and it involves anything that encourages mindfulness, that actually relaxation, and that actually anchors your spirit rather than your physical well-being. And this can be either religion or some belief or anything that will actually give you spiritual peace. Being assertive is one way of actually dealing with anxiety. I didn't want to say, because there's a very thin line between being assertive and being confrontational. because assertiveness comes with the responsibility of really standing your ground without really, striking the other person as rude. And it is known that assertive people are mistakenly thought to be very rude. So when you decide to be assertive, that's when you want to deal with your problem head on. Therefore, if it's funds that you don't have, you knock every office you're looking for funds. And if there are no funds, you question and you until you rest when you have received your funds. And one other way of doing this is through humor. And I guess everyone is a South African. I don't know. I didn't know that we were so much of a happy nation as South Africans, and that we were a nation always in conversations of some sort. Because when we had COVID, there were so many videos that we saw that in the midst of the troubles, uncertainty, death, and everything, we still managed to laugh. And some of them, when you review them, even today, you start laughing. And then lastly, it's commitment. Now, commitment is very important because it's not easy to give up when you are committed. And when there is no commitment, then therefore it's easy to say, I will like to end here and not continue. Now, Kant identified 3 types of commitment, which was continuous commitment, which was which weighed gains and losses. If I stop doing my PhD, this is what I'm going to lose. And cohesion commitment, which is, I like belonging to this group of people. I like being a researcher. And therefore, if I were to stop my PhD, I would miss an opportunity to belong to this group. And then control commitment arises from a sense of duty, some moral obligation. You are interested in understanding a particular phenomenon better. So you feel it is your sense of duty to actually, understand the phenomenon, which might maybe lead to novel scientific findings that can actually help a lot of people. And that is control commitment. So all these types of commitment can actually assist a person in staying resilient, because if you know your gains and your losses, should you stop following your dreams, therefore you know that it's not an option. It's not an option to actually end someone. Now, this Driven's model of resilience looks at resilience from a well-being perspective. And even though this is a blog kind of a publication, the one thing that attracted me to it is that it has an element of being whoever did this really did his or her scientific research very well. Because now when you look at Driven's model of resilience, it touches on what Marilyn Marsh actually suggests. It looks at composure, reasoning, health, tenacity, collaboration. So Driven speaks about the 6 domains of resilience. So resilience is built through fostering healthy behaviors, thoughts, and actions. So this is the other side of the coin, because Martin and Marsh, their understanding of resilience is in connection with learning and learning environments. However, if you look at Driven's model, is more on well-being, and it looks at resilience as one way of actually maintaining, your well-being through healthy behaviors, through healthy thoughts, and through healthy actions. So Driven talks about the 6 domains of resilience as expressed: vision, composure, reasoning, health, tenacity, and collaboration. Now, if you look at vision, the vision is your sense of purpose in life. And once you have a set of purpose in life, people always say that you are driven because you have an end goal. And for you to realize this end goal, you need to be committed, to be motivated, to be dedicated. And what Driven says is that there needs to be harmony with your vision, which means that the actions and decisions are working together towards your sense of purpose. If you have harmony with your vision, is when you are able to match your actions to whatever decision, to whatever goal that you want to achieve. You want to be a PhD student, you know you have to find a supervisor, you know you have to draft your protocol, you know you have to work through it, you know you have to go through ethics, you know you have to source funds. There are so many things that you know that you have to do. And all these things may not be easy to do, but they are a list of things that you have to do in order to be able to achieve your goal. And remember, we have aspirations. There's nothing wrong with having aspirations. However, there needs to be an element of contentment as well. If you are in a group, and this usually happens in the beginning of your research, when you are in a space where everyone seems to be understanding their topics and moving with their protocols, and you appear to be a little bit stuck, a little bit confused, and you sometimes don't understand that the people that you are with in a group are actually going through the same process. And you end up not being content, maybe with your supervisor's relationship, maybe being not content with the kind of support that you are getting from your colleagues. Those are some of the issues that may make you despair. And before you know it, you feel like people are standing on your way. It's as if other people don't want you to actually even start your research. That is why it is very important to understand that issues of resilience are not in isolation, but are within a community. It depends on the kind of support that you are given within your school or within your college. And that is why we have cohort supervisions that have proved to work much, much better than one-on-one, because there you have a safe space to can actually vent your frustrations, and the people happen to understand your concerns, they are interested in what you have to say, and when they critique your work, you find that the feedback that they give to you actually make you more determined to actually achieve your goals rather than giving up. Composure. Now, for you to be composed, it's very important to be able to do introspection or reflection if you want, because the one very important way of saying composed is to have an attitude of not being eager and ready to react to every situation, that negative situation that comes to your way. Remember the cliche, silence is golden? It sometimes works to your advantage, though in most instances it will work to your advantage, though sometimes it is equals to submissiveness, and it invites more problems than solutions. However, composure, if you look at how Driven look at it, it is saying that instead of being reactive, try and search for hidden opportunities for solutions in the problem. When a challenge presents itself, instead of you thinking, this is how I'm going to react, but you look at it and say, okay, because opportunity 1 has been closed, then can't I use opportunity 2? Can I use option 3? So by so doing, you are encouraged to move on rather than to say, no, this is undoable, therefore I won't be able to succeed. And composure is very good for your mental health, because you get time to actually think things through, and whatever action that you take is not compulsive and unthought of. It's something that you really realize that I am going to do A because the consequences are B. And if that doesn't work, then I will use option B. And again, it becomes important for you to have a critical friend, to belong to some kind of a community of practice, because even this space that we are at, we may be many, maybe to not be able to have one-on-one conversations, but we are here within this Zoom session with one interest, to actually look at our well-being as PhD students. So we have something that is linking us together. And 9 out of 10, what I feel is what the next person felt, and how the next person has dealt with a situation may be educational for me, either because I haven't had the same situation or I am facing the same situation currently. And then reasoning. So we always say that there are resources and tools around you. And we know that some of those resources, for some reasons, we tend to overlook them. Within our institution and many other institutions, there is, we have counselors, but it is very rare that postgrad students would use counselors. They are mostly used by undergrads, because you tend to think that I've got this, you know, I've been studying all my life. A PhD is the ultimatum of my studies. And really, if I were to, I do know what I'm supposed to do. And I know that if I do A, I am definitely going to finish and I am going to achieve what I want to achieve. Meanwhile, we work long hours, we strain our minds, we strain our bodies, we end up not eating healthy. And it's very easy when you are working on your laptop to just get, you know, junk around you, and you just keep nibbling as you are working. And because you are focused and you don't even know how much you have indulged in unhealthy food. So you think ahead of how to take action, and you minimize the impact of different scenarios and see new opportunities arising through changes. So the resources that you have in terms of how do I source funds, you have university callouts, you have your supervisor to ask, and you've got the librarian as well to assist you with a lot of things. So as long as you are resourceful, then you can be resilient. And then the obvious one, the health, the work-life balance. The fact that you are doing your PhD doesn't mean that you have stopped living your life, but unfortunately, sometimes PhD dictates that to you, and you have to strive to, even if it's not balanced, but then you should get a little bit of relaxation, a little bit of rest and sleep. And obviously, when you are, the final stages of your PhD are really stressful and strenuous, and you don't want to stop because you feel like you're almost there, and your goalpost keeps shifting and shifting. You think you've got this. Sometimes you think you've got your conclusion right. You take it to your supervisor. The supervisor, it comes back all red and black. You know, you've told yourself that I now know my study, I now know what I'm doing, and I know what I've discovered, only to find that maybe you are failing to express it in a way that is convincing enough. And such things would take you back. And with your protocol, even though it's in the beginning of the stages, but if you feel you feel like you've done your level best and the feedback comes back and your script is read, you really feel like, you know, even though I've put my A game is not being recognized here. And what you need to do, even though you need to finish these things, you need to take care of your health, you need to find time to rest, you need to find time to relax. And this group has had so many discussions around that. And then tenacity, the inner drive to be persistent is very important. And the one good thing is to learn from your mistake, other people's mistakes, because when we as human beings, we live storied lives. And from our storied lives, that is where we tend to learn the most. Because when a person says to you, never ever you do this, because you are going to have problems in the end. Back in the day, the issue was around how your references. And thank God we now have EndNote, which has made everything simple. And any person who did master's or PhD before the era of like EndNote, they will tell you about the nightmare that one would get around references. When you couldn't find your references, you weren't sure where you got something, you had to leave out the whole section because you no longer remember where you took. No matter how careful you are, you got the name spelled wrong, the computer doesn't pick it up, then you had those problems. Today we have EndNote, we have Tenacity, we have there are so many things that have innovations that have come our way that make that make being persistent easier than during the times when there were so many adversities that you would face to such an extent that you would get discouraged. And be hopeful about your ability and be realistic. The Kruger-Dunning effect explains this nicely for you to say that in most instances, people who don't have their abilities up to standard tend to exaggerate and think that they've got this when they don't. So teach yourself to be realistic, to understand that if there is something that you really feel that this I don't know, just don't force your way and think, I'm just gonna brush it off and move on. But what you have to do, deal with it, understand your abilities. And if a person is able to write a chapter in X number of days, learn from them as to how they do it. And if you can't, do it your way, but strive as much as you can to take tips from other people. And then collaboration. Resilience is about collaboration. But for some people, it is a long journey. They are able to be resilient on their own. But it's very important to build networks of mutual supportive connections, managing your perceptions around the context of your interactions with others. And there is a lot around the professional relationships between supervisors and students. And it's very interesting to understand that some people have the best relationships with their supervisors and some have the worst to such an extent that they change supervisors along the way. But it really is a two-way process. As a student, you need to understand the type of interactions that you will get from supervisors, that you will get feedback that sometimes, doesn't make you feel intelligent enough. Because the very fact that your script is just read, everything that you thought you've put in there has been taken. You handed something that's 10 pages, it comes back being 3 pages. Don't despair. It simply means that you need to work harder, you need to sort out things and understand what you are doing better so that you can produce a quality PhD or thesis. Being an effective collaborator means you have a high understanding of what behaviors are best for the context you are in. In most instances, when you fail to get along with people, it's not usually about the people, it is about the behaviors that are allowed in that context and those that are not allowed in that context. Whatever resilience means to you, whether it means like that man that's pushing the rock up the hill, or you believe in being resilient in a group situation, does resilience matter? Can it be taught? Can it be learned? I would like to be able to answer these questions, But then I would like it to be a food for thought and maybe an open discussion to everyone in the session, because it will be very interesting to understand that resilience has been studied, it has been conceptualized, it has been established as to why it matters. But then, can it be taught? Can it be learned? Does it matter to anyone who is doing a PhD? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Donda. You've given us so much to think about. When I'm sitting here with a whole list of notes, and you've given us a blueprint of how to be resilient, you know, and I found that very, very useful personally, and I'm sure it would be useful to the group as well. And I'd love to touch on what you just said now about resilience and whether it can be taught and whether it can be learned. And I'd love to start the discussion about that, if I may. When I would love to think that it can be taught and that it can be learned, you know. There are times in my life where I realized I was not as resilient as what I could have been. And I needed to develop better in order to do so. COVID taught us so much about the importance of resilience, you know. You see the people who'd perhaps have planned for the unexpected, even the extreme unexpected, and how well they did. They managed to succeed and even thrive in the face of adversity, whereas there were others who were less able to do so. And I think that the tips that you brought about today, about how to become resilient, what the elements of resilience actually are a way for us to learn, to develop, to become resilient. I'd like to think that I can be taught to be more resilient, but ultimately I think that it comes with practice, that the more we develop through adversity and take into account what you've just said, that continued practice will build and strengthen us to become that resilient state within the process. Those are my thoughts on it, hopefully very positive. And I'd love to hear what anyone else is thinking about the concept of whether resilience can be taught, whether it can be learned. We have a comment in the chat. Nandasili, would you like to speak to that, or would you like me to read your comment to the group? You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like.
Hi there. I'm quite shy speaking, but I think in my comment I was just highlighting that I think another aspect that facilitates resilience is just the idea of discerning what is it that you are able to control, and just learning to have the patience on waiting out whatever that you are unable to control at any given period. Because the example that I made here in the comments was the example of say the supervisor is unable to give feedback on planned time, or any other situation may come about in the middle of you writing up your paperwork. Then I think that's when one would have to just go back to just seeing what is it that they can have control over, and just waiting out what they cannot have control over. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And added to that, you've put a plan in place. You're waiting for your supervisor, but you're not just sitting and waiting. You're doing something else that can be done in the meantime until that happens, and also sending reminders to your supervisor now and again. Hello, I'm still here, I'm alive, and I need your assistance. And that facilitates that sense of resilience. I totally agree with that. Are there any other comments about the excuse me, the content? If I may, I've got another. I've got so many questions about this resilience. Dr. Brenda, you mentioned the importance of confidence, and I thought that was so very, very useful. You mentioned the concept of I can, being an enabler of resilience, being able to do something yourself, putting that sort of responsibility of on yourself adds to this, the state of resilience. And I was thinking about my own background and looking at a friend of mine, and I thought that this actually ties in quite well. We live in the same neighborhood. We come from similar backgrounds. We see the same sort of daily adversities, people down in their luck, maybe homeless or, as we see so often in our vicinity. But my friend and I, we have two different outlooks on this. We both have PhDs, we're both professionals. Whereas I would say, oh, that could happen to me, I need to do something. He says, I've got a PhD, I've got this, I'll never get there, I've got plans. So while I see adversity in a sense of, with a sense of anxiety, he sees it with a sense of confidence. I can, I've planned, I will never reach that state. I've planned to not experience the adversity that many others go through. And that concept of the confidence supporting resilience really just resonated with me right now. And I hope I got that right, actually, that I'm not misreading it.
Yeah, Lynn, I must say that, my take on this is that we can create awareness, and you've spoken about the fact that you need to practice it for you to be able to say, I'm getting better at being resilient, So what needs to be done is just to create a lot of awareness around it, and for people to actually now say, I would like to be resilient. Therefore, I will try and plan more, try and be as confident as I can, because for me, the reason why I'm attached to resilience is I so happen to be a GBV survivor, and it was really a traumatic experience. And because it was a once-off, I'm not one of those who had it like every day. It's just out of the blue, this one very big thing happened, right? So it was anxiety, it created anxiety, and it was hard dealing with the shock itself. It took some time. So the thing that I did was, when I went for psychological advisors, there came a time when my advisor was like, because they were psychiatrists and they said, like, you've been progressing. We are happy with your progress, and we are happy that you are very realistic. In fact, that's why I always say that religion, sometimes it's a very big anchor, because one of my doctors said to me, you've taught me to respect this black book, because you came out the most strongest of them all. Because when you first came, I was worried about your health, yes, but the most thing I was worried about was your mental state. And you've never lost it, even for 1 second, and even for one moment. And it was long after, then they said to me, the one way of assisting you beyond your sessions is for you to find something that will actually occupy your mind in a positive way, not in a negative way. So I sat and I thought, and then and then I answered back and I said, you know what, I'll go back and study. And then they asked me why, and I said, that I can do, and then here I am, having finished my PhD, and in an institution where it's all about teaching and learning. So you And it was after that I realized later that there was being resilient of me to can actually have, you know, planned it in such a way that I will keep attending my sessions, you know, I will then find something that I like doing and be consistent despite every adversity that I faced, to say, you know, because with such trauma comes divorce, comes this, comes, you know, it's a whirlpool and it's overwhelming. And I was able, because, and then when I look back today to explain how I survived, I always say, you know, it's just resilience. I didn't even know that I had. So it's a question of creating awareness. When people are aware, they can draw from it. If they are aware that there exists this concept and this is what it truly means.
Mm-hmm. And I've had very well put. I think also in that instance, the structured support that was received helped to potentially reinforce this awareness. And many people are not aware about the various aspects of resilience and how you can achieve it. I mean, honestly, I only learned about the structure of it within the session. You know, you mentioned within the call, the session about how postgrads generally do not access the support services as often as undergrads do. And I think something like that needs to change, really, since the support services, especially over here, the student support services at UKZN have been phenomenal regarding the support for mental health and well-being. It's an integral part of, I think, the collaboration aspect, the support systems that we need to put in place in order to maintain and support resilience. So I'd really like to see that more postgrads do achieve that sort of structured support that are also available, especially for this group on campus as part of the student support services. So I second your comment about raising awareness about resilience and knowing where to go to find more information about it is also quite important. So thank you also to you, Dr. Danda, because this session is recorded and will be shared on the UKZN YouTube website. So anybody who was not able to attend today would be able to access this information online within the next week or so. So thank you very much for your input, for the discussion over here, for raising awareness, for teaching me, for teaching others. I'd like to think that resilience can be taught and it can be learned. That discussion, you've planted the seeds to all the participants within this meeting right now and those to come. So thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you to all our participants in this meeting. We have a minute or so for any last comment or question to Dr. Danda. Oh, we've got thanks coming in, seconding the thanks that I've just provided. Okay, well, if not, thank you so much for your time and for your information and for sharing with us in this discussion, Dr. Danda. I hope to see you around soon within the new year. Right. Our last session of the PhD support group meeting will take place next week when we have a session on reflection on this past year and looking forward towards your next year. So we'll see you next week at the PhD support group meeting on Tuesday, 3:30 to 4:30. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Dean. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.